Hey, power people. Welcome to Renewable Rides. I'm Gareth Evans.
And I'm Dan Roberts. We're the founding team of VECKTA, a platform and marketplace streamlining how companies buy on-site energy.
In each episode, we'll uncover the latest trends, challenges, and triumphs relating to the energy transition through the experiences of our team and our inspiring guests.
Our goal is to help companies take action to create a resilient, profitable, sustainable, and thriving energy future.
Let's go. So how did you find yourself here, Karin?
Yeah.
What are you passionate about?
Yeah, so it's a great question because I am not from San Diego originally, and I'm not even from California originally, but I've always, as growing up on the East Coast, I always had a passion for California and the environment. And we were up in the Bay Area for about 10 years after a long stint overseas. And when we came down here, it was really for the opportunity to build San Diego community power. Because what I'm really excited about are building highly collaborative, high-performing teams that are places everybody wants to work.
Yep.
Where I'm passionate about the environment, always have been since I was young. It's just been a real piece of me for many ways. So making sure we can catalyze this clean energy transition and leave our future generations with a beautiful planet. And then also, investing back in communities and making sure that we're thinking holistically about how we do this transition. I talk about that a lot in our staff meetings. The how is as important as the what.
Yes.
We could get to 100% tomorrow. Theoretically, it will be very expensive. Is that the right way to go? Probably not. So we need to do it over time. We want to build up capacity locally. We want to create great jobs. And so that's really important too, that we're benefiting this whole ecosystem here, as well as the larger kind of climate goals and GHG reductions.
Yep.
So that's what got me excited here, to come here. And that was in 2022. And it's been, an amazing, really fast-paced, really crazy 3 years. We were a little over a dozen people when I joined. And we had just started serving our first customer in 2021. So we started really rolling into residential customers in 2022. And now we're almost 85 folks.
Wow.
In that 3-year period, we have revenues of over $1 billion. And we are rolling out programs and really starting to deliver on the promise of what a community choice aggregator is and what it can be and the value that it can bring to different communities.
Yeah. Loving it and excited to dig into what CCA is. Most people might not even know what a CCA is. Before we do, I love your background, super diverse. Where did the love for environment come from? And then what prompted you to start traveling around the world?
Yeah, sure. The environment has always just been a place of refuge for me. When I was little, we grew up on several acres, and I was always outside. I was always just in it, under the bushes, building things, climbing the trees. It was just a part of me. And then at some point, my dad got really sick, but we would be able to still go for walks in the woods and be together. And so it just has a very spiritual place for me as well. So it was always an important part of my personal life. But at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity. So I ended up going into finance. And over time, finance you could start to see the connectivity, that there were a lot of opportunities. People were recognizing the importance of the environment. They were recognizing it. And this really came to a head for me when I was in China, when I was living in China. And of course, there's a lot of pollution there. I mean, the air pollution, the water pollution, the population, there's just an enormous amount of pollution at the time I was there. I can't speak for today, but 20 years ago when I was there, it was a lot of pollution. Same with Indonesia, same with India. I lived in all these places. I saw deforestation firsthand, burning forests, water that was so polluted you couldn't, you didn't even want to go in it. Lots of environmental issues in Asia. And that really started to reignite my interest. There's work to be done here. There's real value to be created here. And investors were starting to think about it as well, and new technologies were coming out. And then in the mid-2000s, solar panels started getting a little more able to get down the cost curve. And so Silicon Valley, right around that time, was just starting to get involved really in the clean energy. Investment firms, venture firms were coming up. And at the same time, I was in Asia, and I was invited to go to the Middle East and work with a private equity firm there. to build out assets and other things. So they were really focused on real estate and oil and gas, tourism, but they also had all these clean energy resources that were totally untapped. And so we started getting involved in that through initially Gulf Capital and then also the Masdar Initiative that had this big goal to build this incredibly zero carbon city. And so then it became clear that technologies were there, is the political will there. And so, I spent quite a bit of time then saying, okay, well, what can we do? Like, how can I institute change with my finance background? And then it went into, okay, investing and working with a lot of entrepreneurs and their new companies and helping them raise capital. So that was for me the start of the transition from finance and international banking to sustainability.
Interesting.
So that was happening while I was overseas, seeing the opportunities, but also the incredible challenges that we faced. Came back here to be closer to family. At that point, I was starting kind of solidifying a personal relationship. And we looked around the world and said, San Francisco and the Bay Area is where we have to go because there's design work there, there's environmental passion there, there's conducive, and there's entrepreneurialism there. So that's how we came back after, I think, 7 or 8 years overseas and came back here. And then I just went full-blown into finance and environment. And then one day someone came to my office and said, would you run this company? Like, well, I'll give it a shot, because with finance, you're consulting a lot. And I really wanted to roll up my sleeves. I realized I was a bit more of a builder. And so that was my first opportunity back in, when that was, 2012, maybe, even sooner, to just start rolling up my sleeves and actually start building stuff. And I really enjoyed that work. And at that time, I was building an international forestry, like a forest carbon marketing organization. So we were working on RED, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. And that was international. So I was connecting my international background with the sustainability, with the complexity of carbon markets. And that sort of kicked off that. And we built a global kind of brand and marketing group. And we were really bringing to corporate customers this idea of voluntary offsets and voluntary carbon emissions. And it was really fascinating. The work that we did turned poachers into protectors of the forest. Literally, that's kind of the work that we were doing, creating ways for them to earn money from protecting the forest versus cutting it down. Nice. When you don't have choices, you go with what you have to do. And so we understood all that. But over time, I felt I really wanted to focus here locally. And the energy sector is where there was so much opportunity, where there's technology advancements, where there's companies to be, organizations to be built. And so I just started gravitating towards that and became at the helm of Build It Green in, I think it's 2016, up in the Bay Area, and then sold that organization.
What was Build It Green?
Oh, sorry. Build It Green was an organization in the Bay Area, about 50 folks strong, focused on energy efficiency program rollouts and distributed energy resources. They also did a little work in codes and standards and workforce development. So I took the helm of that organization. It was kind of in a turnaround moment. So turned it around, moved the visioning going. And then we realized in that 3-year period that to really do the kind of work that we wanted to do, we needed to have a much larger platform. And so a company called Franklin Energy, we kind of mutually approached each other. They did not have a California presence. We did not have a national presence. And so they acquired our organization. And I worked on strategy and regional operations for them before coming to Build It Green. Before coming to San Diego Community Power.
Amazing.
So.
Wild ride.
Yeah, no, love to hear the background. Can you tell us more about San Diego Community Power and maybe just start with CCAs in general for our listeners that are not too familiar with CCAs?
Yeah, I think that's great because the energy system is evolving, and a lot of folks still don't know what Community Choice Aggregator, or CCA, is. I like to start by just thinking about the energy system really broadly and really high level, right? So we've got power generation, solar and wind, geothermal, gas. All this is the power generation piece of the energy system. Then you have the poles and wires, or the transmission and distribution lines. I know you guys know this, but for folks that just to level set.
Yep.
Then there's the billing, all the billing systems and metering and payments. And then there's this fourth area called programs. That's where you're developing incentives to help to encourage behaviors that will drive the change we want to see. So you might say, in this case, offer an incentive, a discount on a battery that you would put in your house that would connect to a virtual power plant, and you get some incentive for installing that battery and maybe an ongoing incentive for allowing us to optimize it. But that then has this virtuous cycle. So for pieces of the system, CCAs work on that first piece, which is procuring the power. And our goal is to procure it in a cleaner, more affordable way. And then to also, for us in particular, to do that locally. So we're creating jobs. We're creating really good quality jobs by building these assets here in the region. So that's a big piece of what CCAs do, is they're enabling the construction of all these power plants that are renewable in nature. And we're doing that by engaging in what are called 20-year, 20 at least, sometimes they're a little bit less, a little bit more, power purchase agreements. Nice. Right? And so then we run our energy, those clean electrons are going into the system through the poles and wires of San Diego Gas and Electric.
Yep.
And then San Diego Gas and Electric has the meters, they own the meters, and they do the billing. And so that's why CCAs sometimes aren't as well known, because to make it easy for customers, they just get one bill. If you were to get 2 different bills, 3 different bills for every little piece, your gas, your this. So we have just one bill that breaks down the different charges and what they're for. And that's the bill that everyone gets. Again, the programs are something that CCAs are able to do. The independently owned utilities, or IOUs, are also doing programs. Increasingly, they're starting to pull a little bit back from those because we have different rules and regulations that guide our 2 types of organizations. And for us, we like to be able to tailor our programs to what our customers have said they need. When we first got started in 2022, we did a survey, over 3,000 unique and relevant responses from our member agencies. Nice. Came in and helped us to see, what do people in our region care about? What do they want to see? And of course, affordability is one. Education is another. Control. How do I have more control over the cost of my energy bill? And climate change, and then green jobs. So based on that, we developed a set of programs that we roll out. But there's a couple other differences as well. So, and I think this is really foundational, is that a CCA is a not-for-profit government agency, as opposed to a for-profit, maybe publicly listed utility. Yes. And so where those groups will have shareholders, we think of it as stakeholders. And our stakeholders are also our customers. Yeah. And our board consists of one elected official who's appointed to our board from each of our member agencies. So the way a CCA forms is cities come together, or municipalities, or the county, and they say, okay, we'd like to be part of a CCA. And so they create, and there was enabling legislation, 20 years ago, I think it was AB 117, that enabled CCAs to be formed. And the way it works is, when a member agency, like the city of San Diego, for example, says, we want to be part of the CCA, everyone is automatically opted in to our service. Yep. once the process completes. Now, from there, you have a choice. You can opt out, you can opt down, or you can opt up to different services. But prior to that, you have no choice, right? You come in and you get what you get. Yep. But now you're able to opt, by being opted in, then you finally have a choice of what kind of service you're looking for. And so for us, our board is, again, as I mentioned, there are 7 members from Imperial Beach, Chula Vista, City of San Diego, National City, La Mesa, Encinitas, and the unincorporated county. Oh, wow. So that's about 1 million customer meters. Probably several million customers. And one elected member from each of their city councils sits on our board. And it's great because our values are aligned. It's also really challenging because a lot of folks put the energy background, and I would say 95% of our board members do not come with an energy background. And so they have to quickly learn all the intricacies, what are they responsible for? Where are we still regulated? Because they set our rates. Our board members working with us, they set our rates. So we have autonomy around our rate setting, what we charge for our electricity. But there are areas where we are still regulated like a utility when it comes to compliance obligations, certain power purchasing, submitting renewable power standard, renewable RPS standards. There are a lot of compliance and other areas where we have to comply with California law and what the CPUC, California Public Utilities Commission, and the CEC, California Energy Commission, are asking for. So on the power side, we're actually quite heavily regulated. But on the rate setting side, when it comes to our what rates we can set, what programs we can do, that's where we have a lot of autonomy.
That's great.
Which allows us to have a little more choice. We can so for example, we have 4 products. We have our Power Base product, which is currently at about a 3% discount to SDG&E's rate.
Yep.
We have, Power On. That's our Power On product. That's our primary product. Then we have a Power Base product, which is even more affordable. It's about a 5% discount to SDG&E. And so if folks are really focused on affordability, they can opt down into that product.
Yep.
Then we also have Power 100, which is a 100% renewable power today. And then we have a 4th one, which is primarily for commercial customers, Power 100 Plus. And that's a LEED certified product. So if you're looking for LEED points, you have these, formal sustainability commitments for just a small additional opt-in. It's a pretty good value, actually. For Power 100, it's just 1 cent per kilowatt hour more than Power On, which is around 50% renewable. And then for the additional LEED Plus, because there's more regulations and rules and costs around that, I think it's about 2 cents per kilowatt hour more.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So
in terms of, you're talking about your stakeholders trying to understand the energy ecosystem, it is obviously super complex, and it's this incredible feat of engineering that we've built over the last century. But there's been such a proliferation of CCAs as a result of there obviously being a recognized challenge. What do you see as being the limitations of the central grid, and what is it that you think the CCAs can really drive in terms of innovation?
Sure. Well, first, just to say just to level set, we've got about 25 CCAs now. The first one started in 2010. We were one of the last ones to form, so we're actually one of the youngest, despite being one of the largest. We're the 2nd largest CCA in the state and probably in the country as well. And we're in about 200 cities. And overall, to date, we have, I want to say, somewhere between 35 and 40% of the load of the state of California.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty significant when you think about how large California's economy is relative to the rest of the world, where we're number 4 or something. Yeah. So it's a big chunk, right? It's not a small amount. And so we were created to create choice for folks, to move faster towards that 100% renewable goal. The state has a 2045 goal. Most CCAs have a 2035 goal.
Oh, amazing.
We felt, and folks, when folks came together to create CCAs, that we could be more innovative, that we could find ways to get there faster by deploying new technologies, right? And enabling that. And I think, from the grid perspective, that's really SDG&E's purview, what needs to happen there. I think, there are some things that folks can do, like reconductoring is a low-hanging fruit to help push more energy through the same wires.
Yes.
That's really important because that's fast. And with artificial intelligence and data centers, we don't have that issue here because we're already fairly expensive. But if you look at Texas and you look at some places in the Bay Area where training centers are going to go in, there's going to be a need for larger amounts of power. We also, there's so much we can do, and we support legislation when, say, there's permitting reform that would help streamline to get assets built, and we all try to stay on top of interconnection, so reducing delays that where they can be solved. And then for us, we talk a little bit about the grid edge and where we're making impact on the grid edge, and that sort of ties to the whole power plant, virtual power plant idea. Yeah. And our pretty big goal of 150 megawatts over the next 5 years to be all connected. So 150 megawatt power plant that is from individual homes and residences, small businesses, commercial applications, all working together to optimize dispatch and storage so that we can lower our peak load, which is that 4 to 9 p.m. that's where not only and people are paying sometimes 3 times more from super off peak to on peak, super on peak. It's literally a big difference, multiples of difference. So if we can encourage behavior change, if we can create set and forget technologies that will automatically shift load to these more solar abundant times, and if we can do that in mass, we can start to reduce our costs, which then, as a not-for-profit, translates into reduced customer costs. So that's one way we see the on-site distributed energy resources supporting the grid here, region-wide. Of course, individually, if you can have on-site generation, there's a lot of benefits there. And I know you guys know a lot about that. But so it's helpful for reducing the need to add more distribution, add more transmission. It's enabling point source consumption. It's enabling optimization. If they're not consuming energy, there should be ways to feed it back into the grid, right? So
Certainly resilience as well.
Yes, resilience. I mean, I went through the days in the Bay Area when the Mars days. I don't remember that. I think it was 2020-ish. And we had just put a solar battery system on our house. And we were the only ones in the neighborhood that had power. You have to unplug everything, get all the vamp load out, and just plug in your refrigerator and your phone and absolutely things you need. But we just ran.
Yeah.
We were a little mini power system. We were able to section off and just run on our solar and our battery. And so that kind of resilience is really important. Less perhaps right here on the very coastal edge, but when you start to go inland where it's hundreds of degrees, where the wildfire risk starts to increase, where maybe there's fewer lines going out, like those are areas that really will benefit from the on-site generation and distributed generation. But we'll all benefit at the end of the day. So we're very bullish and very supportive of that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned virtual power plants, and maybe you can expand upon that. How, as a CCA, are you engaging the business community? Because those are typically larger loads in kind of developing this grid of the future that's maybe there are prosumers involved where they're getting into the grid and getting it at the right times in the evening. How do you see this playing out over the coming 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So we do have a plan. We have that 5-year plan to go from 0 to 150 megawatts. We are starting with residential. And we've kicked that off as a start with something called our Solar Battery Savings Plan, which before the BBB, or Big Beautiful Bill, came about, we were able to stack a bunch of incentives to really encourage homeowners to add batteries to their solar. San Diego has some of the largest proliferation of solar on rooftops around, but we didn't have a lot of batteries. And so what's the use? We have enough solar from 12 to 4. We really need it from 4 to 9. So adding the batteries creates that ability to store that solar, keep it from going into the grid where we don't need it at that time of day, store it, and then put it back into their homes during the 4 to 9 p.m. So we've started with that incentive program to get all this existing solar, these sort of, in a way, almost stranded assets, because they're pushing solar into the grid when we don't need it.
Yeah.
So get those, we started there. And our goal, we now have about 3,500, I want to say, maybe a little less than that, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000, 3,500 batteries that are being installed as we speak, that were hooked up to a DERMS, or a distributed energy management system, that will help. And as they get hooked into that will be the beginnings of our virtual power plant. And then we'll start developing over time. The goal is to engage our small businesses, right, with those smaller systems. So just take the same contractors that have figured this out and got their business models moving into the small business and then into the larger commercial sector. Because there are different challenges along at each stage. And so we have a gentleman in our team who's our grid edge guru, I like to say. So he's working on that. He's developing our strategy. So we're really excited because we want to make sure that our commercial industrial customers have the opportunity to participate in this, especially ones that maybe aren't even doing much from 4 to 9 p.m. They're the perfect targets for us to say, hey, can you help us? Because that lowers... It's just a real virtuous cycle. When you can lower that peak load, it lowers costs across the system for us at scale. And then will enable us to lower costs. Because really we want to do this, but going back to the how is as important as the what. We want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that's affordable for folks. and that they're seeing the benefit of it, and they're actually realizing that benefit. So
I don't think people understand the scale of this, do they? I think I was just reading a stat the other day, and it was saying in California, we've now built over 100 new data centers. We've had all this new EV infrastructure built, and actually the energy generation capacity hasn't had to increase at all at a utility level because of the amount of behind the meter system that's able to take some of this generation growth demand off the grid, essentially.
Well, and it's interesting because we have two or three things going on. We had the original transformation of the energy system from fossil fuels to clean energy. So you have an enormous amount of build right there. So what we're doing, for example, is I want to say almost 2 gigawatts of renewable energy we've contracted for, and about 1 gigawatt of battery storage, right, already. But that's just to get to the clean energy transition without the change in growth. So now you add this really rapid data center growth, which again, affecting us here less, but definitely hitting up Northern California and other areas where the energy is cheaper and maybe there's more capacity on the system. And then electrification, which to be seen how the changes from the Big Beautiful Bill will actually impact the ability of folks to electrify. There's a lot of incentives going away that we had that were encouraging electrification of vehicles, electric systems like heat pumps, and what will come in its place remains to be seen. Will manufacturers be able to lower their prices to absorb that, to keep the momentum, or will we see like a bit of a drop off? I don't think we know. We're obviously watching it very, very closely. But yes, if you add electrification and data center growth and just the transition itself, the amount of build we have to do is substantial. And we're all doing it. I think that's the one thing the CCAs have been really focused on is getting those assets in the ground, getting those groundbreakings, getting things on the system, but then also demand side management. And that's where I think these virtual power plants are really, really key, because we can just build. But if we're not focused on energy efficiency and time of use energy efficiency, talked a little about where the future is, just having energy efficiency isn't enough anymore. It's really efficiency and load shifting and shaving around times of day. Right.
One of the things that we're seeing is that a large driver of the increasing costs that are showing up on people's bills for the ratepayers is driven by the transmission and distribution, the delivery costs. And so can you speak a little bit to how this demand management, these virtual power plants can help smooth that, and ultimately, as the load grows, we don't need to add more poles and wires in order to maintain that affordability, drive more renewables, maintain reliability. I mean, that's I think the big question in the whole broader power space right now.
Will happen. And I will say this truly is a question for San Diego Gas and Electric, or not quite. So, it's really their purview. What I can say is that wildfire mitigation is a real cost that is driving a lot of the increase in cost. And that's really, really important. We've seen the devastation, the Palisades. We saw the devastation here. San Diego Gas and Electric actually undergrounded more of their wires than most other IOUs back when there was a fire here. I'm not sure what it was. It was a very significant fire, and the CPUC then mandated that they underground a lot of their wires. So San Diego is actually in a better place from a fire mitigation than other areas. Now, it's all relative. We still have really high wildfire risk here. And so those mitigation costs are absolutely and necessarily a key driver. Now, how they got there, that's a whole other question, but we're here. And what do we do now? Well, we need to reduce those mitigation costs. I think that's a really big and important piece of what's driving that. And that will go on for the foreseeable future. Climate change, we're doing what we can, right? But it's still, the temperatures are still increasing, and that's changing the cycles, and that's making us more likely to have fire risk. And so when I look at, the breakdown, like that's definitely a really big part of it. And then the investments piece. Reconductoring is the lowest cost, fastest way to increase the lines on the transmission side by 20-30%. But then you still have distribution upgrades that need to happen. And some can be avoided, right? And there's some avoided cost if you can have on-site gen behind the meter. But we're still going to need to build out those systems. So I actually look at it as a both and. We need distributed generation. We need demand side management to lower the cost, but we're going to need reconductoring and probably larger transmission lines, especially given the growth trajectory and the incredible potential of artificial intelligence. I mean, I'm really excited about that if we use it as a force for good, because there's a lot we could do with it to ultimately lower costs in the utility space. Yeah. And I think we're going to see a lot of older economy, if you will, as opposed to software. But there's a lot of opportunity there. But that software coming into businesses with real assets and physical products and services, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit for the right kind of artificial intelligence to help us get there, to reduce costs, to reduce uncertainty. I mean, the amount of data you need to make a load forecast, and the amount of data we have that we're not even using to make the load forecast, it's mind-boggling. And so as we can build those tools, they're not here yet, but everyone I talk to, I'm like, hey, if you're an artificial intelligence, here's what we need.
You see it on the behind-the-meter side, there's thousands of variables that impact a business case.
Right.
And if you're not considering them, you can either design the wrong system, hire the wrong supplier. So, we're seeing it. I'm particularly excited about the whole crypto blockchain endorsement by the current administration, because I think that the blockchain technology layer really enables the prosumer opportunity of the
interesting. Okay.
Infrastructure.
Okay.
You mentioned the One Big Beautiful Bill. I think a lot of people have created a lot of negativity around it. We see this as being actually a huge opportunity because of driving some urgency. The 100% depreciation for companies unlocks a whole new world. Do you see CCAs and states stepping into a potential void that's being created around some of these incentives going away? Do you think it unlocks new program opportunities for you?
Well, it appears to be a net negative for the energy space overall, right? I mean, it's changing too, and it's multifaceted. So you have the bill, but you also have the tariffs, and you have the foreign content restrictions. And of course, we didn't as a country take a strategic approach to dominating this space. And so much of it went to China and elsewhere. And now we're seeing the impacts of that when a regulation like this comes into play, where I think 80% of battery components are sourced out of China. So that's going to be a big challenge and a hurdle because it takes so much time to onshore industries that have been offshored, right? It's not like you can just pick it up and move it. It's not software, right? It's real things. They take years. So I see that as a challenge. I see the tax credits going away is actually a really significant challenge. And here's where it gets really challenging. So we've got that, we talked about that gigawatt of stuff. Okay, so inevitably, when you contract for a wide variety of projects, not all of them will make it through. That's common knowledge. That's no secret. The rub now is that sometimes they don't make it through because of an interconnection delay, right? And until the power can flow, we can't buy it. So if you are not interconnected and flowing in time for this new cliff, not only have you lost that time, and time is money in developers' world, it's also now you might not be able to access the tax credits. So it really depends. And longer term, prices will go up. I don't see how they don't. When you add the tariffs and you add the foreign restrictions and you add the lack of the PTC and ITC credits, there really is only one conclusion, which is that they will go up. Now, we can do things around the edges to mitigate, but that was a huge benefit to the industry, and it's spurred so many jobs, it's spurred so much production. We saw batteries here to increase. Now, batteries are not in that ITC, PTC reduction. However, they've got the tariffs. So
the foreign entity.
Yes, and 80%. So there's going to be some challenges there. So I see a lot of headwinds as a result. There will be some bright edges and some bright lights, like potentially some artificial intelligence growth, some other things. But by and large, it's going to be confusing too for our commercial and industrial customers. Like, what do we do now? We were thinking about this, we were planning this, but I'm not under construction by this deadline. Can I get this done by 2027? It looked like there's a bit of an extension for commercial industrial customers. So we might see a rush, like a short blip. And I do hope people, if they had it on their radar, they're moving quickly, because it does take time. And but yeah, I think it's overall, unfortunately, a net negative.
Interesting.
Broadly, and as a as a citizen of the world, I think it's going to slow things from a broader clean energy perspective. I think we're seeing the same thing as far as it's going to drive up utility costs, whether it's getting their supply from a CCA or otherwise, but just generally the utility costs are going to go up, which is going to make behind the meter systems that much more attractive. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that as well.
I think there will be trade-offs. I would say that with the tariffs in place, the cost of equipment will continue to go up. But likely, yes, if you're able to buy systems today and energy prices go up later and you've locked in some pricing, you should be in better shape.
Yeah.
But I think globally and overall, and to me overall, it's still a net negative. I would love to be wrong. I would love for there to be something like that just generates this huge outburst. But we're seeing with electric vehicles as well, right? The tax credits going away there, the home energy credits for heat pumps, for those sorts of things going away. And you really need that bundle, right? On-site generation is one piece of a larger holistic approach where you want to minimize your usage of your energy so you can actually then minimize your system size. And so with those tax credits going away, that's going to reduce that incentive. It's going to make it's going to have this balance. There's going to be a balancing effect there on that. So again, it's a little bit of a wait and see because things are changing too. What we have in this moment may not be what we have in 6 months from now.
Yeah, and we should get some guidance here in the next 3 weeks on what the meaning is of start construction.
Yes.
On the safe harbor side of things.
Right. And what is in service exactly? What if you're ready to go, but you're waiting for a utility to check to sign the last, on the last dotted line. So there are definitely some ambiguities here that we'll need to navigate. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. But I know what we're doing is we're committed to working with our partners. Yeah. We're committed to finding those incentives and grants where they are. We're committed to reinvesting in our community. I think you asked a question, I didn't mean to dodge it at all, which is, will CCAs step in and support with these diminishing tax credits? We will look at that. We have to make sure we're using our ratepayer dollars really effectively and efficiently. Yeah. So at some point, an incentive can be a little too much, right? So we have to find that balance between incentives and behavior change. Yeah. And we knew what that was when we ran our pilot. It was very successful. We were like, great, we found it. This is it. But now things have changed. And so we're looking to see how else where other incentives might be that we can add and we can stack to, again, encourage the behavior that we want to see, which is around virtual power plants, which is around demand side management, which is around load shifting and shaping. Yeah. We're going to be rolling out a flex load program, which is, again, it's a virtual power plant, but for small devices like thermostats and heat pumps and the other things too, but it's going to be inclusive and that they'll all be connected into the system. So the idea is your house can really respond and react to market signals. So that's still in our plans. That's still what we want to see happen.
I think that's a good transition to our power surge round. So let's make a quick shift. If you could be any one energy technology, what would it be and why?
I think I already answered that question, actually. I would definitely be an artificial intelligence tool that could accurately predict load and load shapes and load forecasts for utilities, because it'll just save us so much money, reduce the stress level, and overall benefit the grid. So that's what I would be.
Love it. We haven't had that one before.
Yeah,
great. And you're obviously super knowledgeable, well-read. Where do you get your information? Is it podcasts? Do you like reading? Do you have any preferred newsletters or sources of intelligence?
Yeah, I get a lot from my team. Yep. I would say, well, the first place I get it is from the team. So we hired a lot of experts. There are a lot of people in this organization far more well-versed on these topics than I am. And that's okay, right? They should be, because they're on the ground making it happen. So a lot of information I've learned from our team then taking that concentric circle a bit out from the CCA community. We're a very collaborative community because we don't actually cross paths. We have geographically defined areas, at least for now. So we're very, very collaborative. We share all kinds of documents. We share learnings. We get together regularly. All of us are on the board of something called the Cal CCA, which is our industry body. And so we're constantly sharing. We've got websites, libraries, all kinds of webinars, all kinds of things. So that's kind of immediate, like where my vast majority has come from. I would say around books. I would say if you're in the California energy industry and you haven't read California Burning by Catherine Blunt, then you don't know what you're in.
Yeah.
I think that was a really great eye-opener for me. I thought she wrote it very factually and just very pragmatically about this is how we got here. And you can argue that, you can lament that, but this is how we got here. And so now what? So I like that book as a primer. I think there's some really good courses out there. Mm-hmm. I took a certificate program, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago now, it was at Stanford School of Engineering. It was an executive education energy innovation program. And I really liked that. They had modules on like battery chemistry. They had your basic modules, but then they went into some real detail around specifics of the grid, specifics of battery chemistry, so you can it's almost like playing catch up. So that you can come to it and say, okay, now I know why we use lithium, or I know why this technology might be emerging and coming up, but what its constraints are. Yeah. So that was a really interesting course. And then right now, like the stuff that I'm watching is all around AI. And that's a bit as catch can. I'm taking a course at Berkeley just to, again, get all the foundational work set. But then, and then it'll help you when I'm in conversations with vendors. I'm like, oh, so tell me about the how you train your model on the... And they're just like, Yeah. So I like that. I like to give them a little... But it's helpful. You need to know what you're getting into because this stuff, it's powerful, but it also, on the flip side, it's powerful and it has a lot of potential. It also can be really dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so you have to understand the foundations before, especially as the CEO who's going to implement and help drive its adoption into the organization, right? So that's sort of my latest. Probably go on for another year and then I'll go on to something else. But
always learning.
Yes. All right. Well, let's wrap with what does this statement look like for you, either personally or professionally? I will have been successful when.
Okay. I will have been successful when I can point to the real tangible impact that I have made on the clean energy transition, as well as the people that I've inspired along the way to continue their work or to engage in this clean energy transition. So professionally, I think it's pretty ambitious. I don't have a specific goal, like millions of people. But if I can get there, great, but it's really to be able to say, hey, we had a real impact here. We did this. We got to 100% in an area where we had a lot of challenges, and it inspired others around the world or around the country to pick up this idea. That'd be one thing. I think personally with a family, raising a family in this, world and in this climate, really trying to create globally minded citizens that are going to be leaders and they're going to use their energy and their power for, as a force for good in the world. And then I would say also one can't forget about, so there's professional, there's family, and then there's self. Yeah. And I know those are, it's this really challenging triangle of being all in at work, all in your family, and all in to make sure you're getting the nourishment and the rest and relaxation that you need. And as a mother, typically that's the last one that we focus on. And so I think to me, success though has that fine balance. And sometimes it tips one way, right? 1 week or 1 month or 1 year and tips the other way. But having those three so that you're feeling, oneself is feeling nourished and, all the things that make you healthy and happy as an individual, and that your family unit is solid and strong, and you're raising kids to be, have agency in the world and to do really positive things and to care about those things. And then to, again, have that tangible impact. So I don't know where I am on any of those three, but that you asked me what the future looked like where I'd be successful. That's what I would say. It's an ever elusive journey to those 3 points of the triangle.
Funny you mentioned that. When Gareth and I were coming in this morning, we were having a similar conversation on taking care of oneself and family along with business. I think that's something I think a lot of professionals are grappling with.
Yeah. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your collaboration. Keep up the great work. We love watching the progress your startup is making. It's very impressive.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me here. And this was a great conversation. So I appreciate you coming out and being willing to chat with me and learn about what CCAs are and what we do.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks, Karin.
Thanks.
Dan, great interview. I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, Karin is clearly very dynamic, and I always love when people come out of particularly finance and figuring out ways to apply their experience and driving more both innovation, but also just deployment of capital to the energy transition.
Yeah, and a desire to learn and be at the cutting edge is super important, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear her perspective, and I think they can be a bit more innovative than maybe the traditional investor-owned utilities and others. But what was your primary takeaway?
Yeah, I think the big takeaway for me is I really enjoy learning about the concept of CCAs and representing stakeholders versus shareholders and actually driving for clean, affordable, reliable power and providing people with choice. I think this is super important, isn't it? And I think it's something we live for every day, is how do we give businesses choice over their energy future and how do they control it? Because it's such a critical input to their business that when you're a passive consumer, you have no control over that. So I love that they're offering different choices, and that's just going to keep evolving over time, isn't it? And I really enjoyed hearing about their desire to build the virtual power plant for this region, because that unlocks so much potential.
Yeah. And to build on that, just the local distributed nature of CCAs and their focus on the local communities and the local needs, which here in San Diego are going to be different than that of Marin Clean Power up in the Bay Area. And listening to their constituents and even having their board representation be
that's right
the local city council members. And so I think that seeing the local nature and the local evolution, I mean, we kind of went from that back in the Tesla and Edison days, which was very local, to now, having this big centralized grid where power is produced hundreds of miles away, to now starting to come back to this local nature, whether it be in a region like San Diego or all the way down to an individual home or business. And I'm excited to see in the coming years and decades how we can drive more of that local production and consumption and demand management and virtual power plants in order to absorb some of the big load growth, but also ensure that it's clean, reliable, and affordable.
Yeah, and not just that. It's what are we achieving and how are we achieving it, and how do we do it in a really sustainable way, instead of just setting a random target and thinking that you can figure it out on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, awesome to spend some time with Karin.
Yeah.
And I certainly look forward to all the different programs that they're going to bring forward for commercial industrial businesses.
It's great. Cheers.
We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.